In public corporations, managers and employees work on behalf of the shareholders who own the business, and therefore they have an obligation to pursue policies that maximize shareholder value. If you like to understand how a manager can maximize stockholder wealth, you must know how such wealth is determined in the corporation. One proxy for value could be stock price. Stock price maximization requires managers to take a long-run view of operations. At the same time, managerial actions that affect a company's value may not immediately be reflected in the company's stock price. This means a company's stock can have two prices. One is the market price and the other one is intrinsic value or true value. In an equilibrium setting, these two prices should be equal, but in reality, they are not. Let's see how value is determined. The top box indicates that managerial actions combined with economy, taxes, and political conditions influence the level and risk of the company's future cash flows, which ultimately determine the company's stock price. As you might expect, investors like higher expected cash flows, but they dislike risk. So, the larger the expected cash flows and the lower the perceived risk, the higher the stock's price. The second row differentiates what we call the true expected cash flows and risk from perceived cash flows and risk. True means investors' expectation about cash flow and risk when they have all the information. Perceived means investors' expectation about cash flow and risk when they do not have all the information. The third row shows that each stock has an intrinsic value, which is an estimate of stock's true value as calculated by the competent analyst who is supposed to have the best available information. The market price is the actual market price based on perceived but possibly incorrect information as seen by the marginal investors. When a stock's actual market price is equal to its intrinsic value, the stock is in equilibrium. Market price can and do differ from intrinsic values. Eventually, however, the two values tend to converge as the future unfolds. This picture illustrates how the difference between market price and intrinsic value can cause a stock price to be overvalued or undervalued. You now know that wealth maximization is an important financial goal of a corporation. Corporations, however, do not achieve this goal without conflict. One common conflict is between managers and shareholders. It has long been recognized that managers' personal goals may compete with shareholder wealth maximization. In particular, managers might be more interested in maximizing their own wealth than their stockholders' wealth. Thus, managers might pay themselves excessive salaries. An effective strategy is to motivate managers to act in shareholders' best interests. Useful motivational tools include reasonable compensation package, firing of managers who do not perform well, and the threat of hostile takeovers. Another conflict is between stockholders and debt holders. Debt holders, which include the company's bankers and its bondholders, generally receive fixed payments regardless of how well the company does, while stockholders do better when the company does better. In other words, debt holders receive limited upside in a good state of the world, while exposing themselves to downside risk in a bad state of the world. This situation leads to a conflict between these two groups, to the extent that stockholders are typically more willing to take on risky projects. Bondholders attempt to protect themselves by including covenants in the bond agreements that limit firms' use of additional debt and constrain managers' roles in taking on excessive risky projects. I hope you now better understand the financial goal of corporations and the conflict of interests between different parties within or outside of the organization. Thanks for watching this video.